So today I'm joined with the CEO of Jazeera Airways, Rohit Ramachandran. Rohit, thank you for joining.
Great pleasure to be here, Lucy.
So obviously I've read in your recent results that you've had a 41% increase. Is that due to just passenger demand to wanting to travel in a post-COVID world? Is it any kind of based on any new routes that you've opened up? You know, how are you operating? Do you want to see this kind of continue? And how are you competing, I guess, with other low-fare carriers, other carriers within the region?
So, to be fair, I think this region experienced its post-COVID bump, as we call it in the industry, last summer. And there was a tremendous increase in demand for people who had been more or less trapped in their homes for the duration of 2020 and 2021, who wanted to travel. This year is more normalized. So the reason why you see the 40+% increase in passengers carried, one, we've been aggressively driving load factors. And if you see the trend from, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago, where the average load factor for Jazeera was in the low 70s, and now on an average year-round basis, it's in the low 80s. And we are actually aiming towards having it year-round in the high 80s at the very least, in line with low-cost airlines or good low-cost airlines around the world. The second aspect of your question, Kuwaitis in general are inveterate travelers. You have the second highest per capita GDP in Kuwait. People love to travel. They are happy to spend. The weather is not great for at least 6 months of the year, so there's an added incentive for them to travel, and we're happy to cater to that demand as well. So I would say the vast majority of the routes that we have opened in the last couple of years, certainly last year and this year, are routes that were never earlier connected to Kuwait before. So very much in line with the low-cost business model, which is opening new ONDs. And if you look at the routes we opened this year, which is Tirana in Albania, Tivat in Montenegro, new routes in Iran, in Central Asia, the second airport in Cairo. These are all routes that were never connected with Kuwait before. And we're happy to actually take the first step to driving and creating new lines of traffic and business. If you see the region, there are a number of large government-owned, state-owned, full-service carriers that operate. We, as a listed company that doesn't have a rich daddy, that needs to stand on its own feet, compete quite well with these other carriers. And the way to do that is make sure that you keep the proposition simple. You have a good, clean, new airplane. You operate on time. You have good schedules. You make sure you have great prices. And as long as you don't need a flat bed on a long intercontinental service with champagne and caviar, Jazeera is the preferred choice out of Kuwait.
So you mentioned obviously the new routes that you've released over the last couple of years. Are there any in particular that you've been surprised by in terms of just the level of demand you're seeing?
I would say Eastern Europe has performed extremely well, especially Belgrade, Tirana, Tivat, Prague. All of these routes have done well. Central Asia has done particularly well. We have been quite strong into Central Asia. We fly into several airports in Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Armenia, Georgia, all of these places. A big segment that we cater to is the religious tourism, people going for Umrah and Hajj, and that's been really great as well. And our recent expansion into Iran and our forthcoming expansion into Iraq also will prove to be interesting. So far, Iran has performed extremely well.
So what routes are you looking at expanding into? You've mentioned Iraq. Are there any more in the pipeline that you'll be announcing over the next 6 months to a year, let's say?
Yes. So we expect to expand more into South Asia to begin with, particularly India. I believe talks are imminent between the governments of India and Kuwait to expand the air services agreement that will give carriers on both sides the right to expand their services into each other's countries. Similar with Pakistan. I expect our business in Iran and Iraq both to grow. Currently, we fly into 3 cities in Iran, which is Shiraz, Mashhad, and the capital Tehran in Iran. We have at least another couple of more routes that we intend to launch. Iraq, in fact, I have a team there next week. We expect to start Baghdad, Basra, and Erbil, which are the 3 main cities in Iraq. We fully expect to expand into Saudi Arabia. We already fly into 8 cities direct nonstop from Kuwait into Saudi Arabia. We expect to add at least another 4. There's a lot of economic activity happening in Saudi Arabia, as you're no doubt aware.
Yes.
And our expansion, particularly to the smaller cities in Saudi Arabia, the likes of Qasim, Abha, Hayal, have been phenomenal, and we expect to capitalize on that growth as well.
So you've mentioned the smaller cities. So is that sort of the ones that you won't necessarily as much competition on those routes? I'm thinking in terms of Saudi Arabia compared with the likes of, let's say, Wizz Air or other sort of low-cost carriers in the region. Are you looking at smaller routes specifically?
I think that comment is very true, and it goes beyond Saudi Arabia. If you ask me today, what is our most profitable route? It's probably a destination that most people have not heard of and cannot find on the map, and that's called Osh, which is the 2nd city in Kyrgyzstan, and that's one of our most profitable routes. And that's very true of Jazeera, and I would say most low-cost carriers, where they help customers travel directly from their hometown rather than having to connect through busy, expensive international gateways.
So I guess moving on from, talk of markets and kind of where you're wanting to expand to and routes and such, right. Obviously as a low fare carrier, kind of you have to consider weight, you have to consider cost all within your operations. Was kind of weight the primary factor that drew you to these seats? Sort of what was the reason for picking it?
I would say there are 3 main reasons why we selected XLC, and the 3 main considerations while we were making our evaluation. The first is the impact on the bottom line. So the weight, which is a 1,200 kilo saving per airplane, per ship set, which not only helps reduce fuel burn, but also helps us to add another row of seats in there, because these are also slimmer. And without sacrificing passenger comfort, with the same seat pitch, we could add another row of seats, and that helps reduce costs through fuel burn. It helps increase revenue through additional seats on the airplane, and increasingly importantly, is good for the environment, and it has a measurable impact on emissions as a result of the reduced fuel burn. All these 3 played an important role in our decision to select XPC.
And I suppose finally, what would you say is top of the agenda for Jazeera Airways in 2024? What is your main focus?
So an important aspect of our business, which is in my view unique, and something we have not yet discussed but will continue to have importance as we go through, is Jazeera Terminal T5. So for those of your readers and viewers who don't know about this, in my view, we are one of the very few, perhaps only, airlines in the world that owns its own terminal. So we funded, designed, built, and now operate Jazeera Terminal T5 in Kuwait. Not only does this give us the ability to control and improve the passenger experience end to end, but it's also a fantastic, profitable part of our business, where all the F&B, all the duty free, all the parking, lounges, porter service, all of those things we can monetize, and it adds significantly to the bottom line of the group. Similarly, we set up our own duty free company for this terminal, which is wholly owned by Jazeera. And that has been a phenomenal success. Moving forward, and because of this success of T5, we are now embarking on a new greenfield terminal project, and that's currently in various stages of government approval. That will eventually be a 10 million passenger terminal, customized, very simple for low-cost operation.
I suppose that kind of goes, a lot of the time, it goes hand in hand with fleet renewal and bringing in newer aircraft. But what is Jazeera Airways doing for the sustainability side of your operations as well?
Sure. So I would say the best example I can give of putting our money where our mouth is investing in new green technology. So the fact that we were the first and the launch operator of the new generation airplane, the A320neo in the region, the fact that we are routinely demonstrating an 18% fuel burn improvement compared to the older technology, the fact that our terminal is currently, and more importantly, moving forward in T6, going to be a green terminal, making sure that we adopt all of those measures. The fact that we have 8 different types of fuel-saving initiatives in flight operations, including single-engine taxi and optimization and so on. The fact that we have a program called Choose, which helps passengers offset the emissions of their particular individual journey. All of these things add to the fact that we take this seriously, although this is not necessarily the topic of the day in the region in which we operate. Importantly, we've been keeping a close watch on SAF and sustainable aviation fuel being a chicken and egg situation where you're not able to drive down the unit cost of SAF to a point where it's comparable with traditional aviation fuel. But you will never be able to do that unless you drive up volumes. But airlines will never drive up volumes until the price goes down. And so there is this circular situation where the only way to break out of this, in my view, is with the support of governments who step in and play the temporary role of breaking this circular impasse and drive down prices to the point where it's comparable to existing aviation fuel prices or thereabouts. Because we also have obligations to shareholders, and since we are a listed company, we have to ensure that we have that in mind. As a matter of principle, we have signed on to the IATA pledge of being carbon neutral by 2050. I'm certainly hoping we can achieve that long before then. And every possible avenue to achieve that is being actively considered with action rather than words.
That makes complete sense. And then I suppose also from bringing SAF on board within your operations as well, it's sort of how do you keep your fares low at the same time as bringing in SAF, which is more expensive than your conventional jet fuel. Yeah, it has a bit of a cycle to it. So yeah, no, thank you. That's a very comprehensive, great interview. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Lucy.